Hey everyone, welcome back to another Blender video. Today we're going to be talking about how we can go ahead and UV unwrap a cylinder, which is one of the two fundamental objects in unwrapping things. So we covered the cube in the last video and a little bit about why UV unwrapping is important. So today we're going to be focusing on how we can unwrap cylindrical objects. And this applies to anything. You could imagine this is maybe an arm, or it could be some kind of log shape, but you can use this with any kind of cylindrical object, but we'll just be using the base cylinder today. So I'll go ahead and left click this object and just press X and then choose delete since we don't need it. And all I'll do to add an object is hold down the shift key on my computer and then press A, and that's going to open the add menu. Then under mesh, I could just go ahead and choose cylinder. And now we're going to need to open up a brand new menu in order to UV edit properly. So I'll come up to the top left hand corner and you can see this little cross shape is going to start to appear. And then all I need to do is left click and drag and just pull out another menu. And that's just created a second 3D viewport for us here. So all we need to do is change this. So if I come to the top left hand corner, you can see we can actually change our menu here. So I could change it to the shader editor if I wanted to edit shaders, or I could change it to timeline, but we're just going to change it to something called UV editor, which allows you to UV unwrap. And before I talk about this, let's go ahead and add a quick texture so we can actually see our UV unwrapping process. So I'm just going to come to my menu on the right here called the properties menu, and I'm going to come to the bottom here, which has something called material properties. Then I'm going to press this plus new button to add a new material. And where it says base color, you can see there's a little yellow dot here. I'm going to left click that yellow dot and change it to image texture. Now I'm just going to left click this plus new button, and you can give it a name if you want. I'm not really going to bother, but you can see this option here called generated type. It'll be blank by default. So just left click that and change it to UV grid. And we could go ahead and give it a name as well. Maybe we can just call it grid. And once you're done, you can just go ahead and press new image. Now, those of you who are familiar with a bit of UV unwrapping will know that this is a little bit of a problem here because these squares here are quite squished and we want to have them as close to square as possible. The one on top here is okay. And this is because we're using Blender's default UV unwrap, which is pretty decent, but isn't exactly got perfect squares. Either way though, we still need to learn how to UV unwrap a cylinder because when we're unwrapping more complex objects, like how I mentioned at the start of the video, we need to know how to use this method as well as the cube unwrap method so we can pretty much unwrap anything. Because most objects are just a combination of cubes and cylinders, although they may be slightly more complexified. But once you understand the real basics of how to unwrap a cylinder and a cube, it's pretty easy to go ahead and unwrap pretty much anything. And I use this to unwrap characters and things like that all the time. So pretty useful stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about how to unwrap this. So I'll press tab to go into edit mode, and let's just zoomed in my UV editor here. So I can just scroll my wheel here to zoom out. And first of all, we're going to want to make sure we have everything selected. So I'm going to press A to select everything, A for all, and that allows me to see everything in this menu here. So if you're not seeing anything, it's just because you don't have anything selected. So you just need to press A to select all if you can't see your UV here. So now for actually unwrapping, we will need to deselect everything. All I'm going to do is still in edit mode here, which is just at the top here. Make sure you're in edit mode. And I'm going to make sure I'm in edge select mode, which is this option here. You can see we've got face select and vertex select. So make sure it's on edge select. You can also use 2 on the keyboard as the hotkey to go into edge select mode. And now all I'm going to do is I want to create what I call the Harry Potter glasses. So what I mean by this is we want to select 1 circle, 2 circles, and then a line in the middle to make a Harry Potter glasses. You'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and left click, and that's going to allow me to select that entire loop of edges. And then I'm going to shift left click, another edge here, and you can see this is like the middle bit of our glasses. If you can imagine, this is 2D. We've now got a circle and a line. And then if I press shift and then Alt and then left click, you can see we've now got our second circle here. So if you imagine there's a line in between these 2 circles, that's just gone ahead and create some Harry Potter glasses. So that's how I like to memorize the cylinder unwrap. One thing about this line here is there's a chance that this could create a visible seam when you're using a non-seamless texture. So just keep in mind you might want to keep this in a less visible area when you're UV unwrapping. But apart from that, to go ahead and mark the seam, now a seam pretty much just means a cut because essentially we are cutting up our object in order to flatten it into a 2D form, which is what UV unwrapping essentially is. So I'm going to press Control and then I'm going to press E, which is going to open up this thing called the Edge menu. And then all I need to do is choose Mark Seam. Also, when you're in Edge Select mode, you can right click and then choose Mark Seam from here as well. Now I've done that, I can just press A to select all, U to open the Unwrap menu, and this time I'm just going to choose Unwrap Angle Based. And now you can see we've got a lot more squares here this time. But one thing to keep in mind is there's a lot of extra texture space here, which isn't exactly optimal when you're considering things for games and things like that. But if you were to combine this with a few different objects, as you'd be unlikely to be using just a cylinder like this, then it's going to be much better. But I don't want you to worry about any of that optimization stuff, as it's a little bit more advanced. So that's us gone ahead and unwrapped the cylinder. Let's now go ahead and have a quick quiz to try and recap what we've learned today. So first of all, I want you to think about what kind of shape did we go for when we were trying to unwrap this object, or what kind of shape were we trying to make with all the cuts we were making on our cylinder? So the answer was we're trying to get this Harry Potter glasses kind of effect, and that's going to allow us to memorize how we can unwrap this cylinder. Next question, I want you to have a little think about where we chose to mark this. Let me see if I can find it. This cut here. So you can see there's this cut we made here. How do we choose where to put this? So the answer is we want to ideally have it in a place which is less visible. This is important because sometimes even with seamless textures, it can sometimes create an effect where you've got a visible cut in the texture, and this is unavoidable when we're doing UV unwrapping. You're always going to have cuts somewhere. Some people like to use this to create naturally occurring visible seams, like for example in a chair, you'll sometimes get parts where the wood just changes because it's changed material, so you could use a seam on purpose there. But if you want to hide a seam on this cylinder, for example, then you'd want to have it where the camera isn't really going to see it as much. So that's something to consider there. But yeah, I hope you got on okay with that quiz. And apart from that, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll go ahead and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.